The sun was coming up as I was coming down. The door was locked and I couldn't get in. It looks like I'm in trouble again. I know it's wrong, but I know I'm right. I just can't wait for Saturday night. I try to do good, but I just can't do it. I see a swinging door and I wanna go through it. The door was locked and I couldn't get in. It looks like I'm in trouble again.
While living in Columbia, Missouri, Deke Dickerson formed the much-loved garage rock band, the Untamed Youth. He was 17. In the early 90s, at the age of 22, Deke moved to LA and has enjoyed great success as an excellent guitarist. He once had a regular column in Guitar Player, has written several books on guitar, and has scored and contributed songs to film soundtracks. 2 of Deke's songs are featured in the newest Disneyland ride, Cars Land, at Disney's California Adventure theme park. In 2019, he won the Ameripolitan Music Award for Musician of the Year, and the Hallmark Guitar Company of Maryland manufactured a Deke Dickerson signature guitar. Those of us who follow Deke know that he stays very busy touring, not just in the States, but also in Canada and Europe. He's always on the go, but I managed to track down the one, the only, Deke Dickerson.
Well, I don't blame her for getting sore.
You're listening to Frets with DJ Faye. No lessons, no technique info. I just talk to people who play guitar. Stay tuned. Hello.
Hey, man, it's Deke.
Hey, Deke. Thank you so much for doing this.
I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
I know you're from the Midwest, and I used to see you in St. Louis at shows, but you were originally from Columbia, Missouri, is that right?
Yeah, well, I was born in St. Louis.
Oh, you were?
Yeah, and then I kind of moved around a bit. My family's originally from Virginia, and so we lived in Virginia for a couple of years, but then we moved back to Missouri, to Columbia, because my mom was a college professor there.
Yeah.
And so I still call Columbia my hometown, but it's funny because I've lived in California longer than I ever did there, but I still call it my hometown. My dad still lives there.
Yeah. Do you get back there much?
Well, it's been a little weird with COVID. I visited my dad once or twice during COVID, and he wouldn't even let me in the house. We were out talking in the backyard.
Yeah. Everybody's being very, very cautious.
Yeah, but I hope to get back there this year.
Yeah. Well, was guitar the first instrument you learned to play?
No, actually, I started in the school band playing saxophone.
Oh, wow.
I made the mistake of telling the band teacher that I wanted to play saxophone like Bill Haley and the Comets and Boots Randolph. And then he just immersively made fun of me the entire time. And of course, later on, I wound up playing with the Comets and also did a gig playing bass for Boots Randolph. So I kind of felt that I wound up doing okay.
Yeah, that's great. When you were still like in the teen years, who were some of your early guitar influences, and what bands were you listening to back then?
So I'll be brief with this, but I was just an extremely weird kid. I look back on it now, I'm like, wow, I would have thought I was a total weirdo if I wasn't me. But, I grew up in the 70s and all my friends were listening to Kiss and Led Zeppelin. And somehow or another, when I was about 5 or 6 years old, I just got turned on to 50s rock and roll. And something about it just kind of latched on. And then, of course, later on, when I started playing guitar, got into guys like Chuck Berry and Gene Vincent and the Blue Caps and Eddie Cochran and all those kind of people. And it just kind of exploded from there.
Yeah. Well, you were in, I think, your early 20s when you left the Midwest to move out to LA. And what prompted you to head out there?
Well, I had a band in Columbia called the Untamed Youth, and we toured and we made records. And I really thought, we're going to make it. And so we kept losing members. People kept quitting because they didn't want to tour. And it was just very difficult to keep a band together. So the initial thing for moving to California was to keep the Untamed Youth going as a band and find some musicians out there. It didn't really work out that way, but I loved Los Angeles from the first time I ever went out there. So I still love it. So I never regretted making the move.
Yeah, I love it. I have a brother out there, and I'm actually overdue for a trip, but I used to go out a lot, and I pretty much fell in love with it my first couple trips out there. Well, I used to go see Untamed Youth, just like smaller clubs around St. Louis, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I remember a thing you did on occasion, maybe at every show. I remember at some point you'd be playing your guitar, but you'd walk over to where there was a beer can and you'd grab it with your mouth and like hoist it up, still playing the guitar while this is going on, and kind of guzzle down a beer like while you were playing. Am I remembering that right, or did I make that up?
No, that is correct. Although actually when I would grab the beer can with my mouth and still play guitar, it was when I was doing a thing called the beer fountain, where I would just kind of let the beer drain into the back of my throat, and then I would just spray it all over the audience.
Yes, that's
which really endured me in the hearts and minds of our fans.
Oh, I loved it. Yeah, I remember that.
Back in those pre-COVID days when it's like, yeah, let's let this guy spit all over us.
Anything goes. That's funny.
And from the Untamed Youth, who come from New York, it seems rather puzzlingly, a little surf music, in fact a tribute to a well-known American bear.
Blue River!
What if it was possible to get local fresh groceries delivered right to your front door? You could take up guitar lessons with all that free time. I know a guy. Or learn the tuba. I don't give tuba lessons, but my point is, you'll have the extra time. Instacart gives you unlimited grocery delivery for one low monthly fee. That's way better than the other guys that nickel and dime you every time you use their app. Forget that one ingredient you need to make Aunt Bess's spaghetti sauce? Ugh, more frustrating than a broken B string. Instacart can deliver that that ingredient right to your front door faster than a Roy Clark guitar solo. You can shop multiple stores, find deals and offers in your area to help you save money, and every item is hand-selected by shoppers based on your preferences. No more rock-hard avocados, and they'll keep that carton of eggs safe from cracking, too. To start a 14-day free trial, follow the link in today's show notes to let Instacart know that DJ Faye, that's me, sent you, and to help support Frets with DJ Faye. And remember, stay tuned. So you get settled out in California. Did you start to meet and maybe even play guitar with anyone who you feel like were they like someone who was like instrumental in shaping your success as a musician? Or?
Well, so I moved out to California with Mace, the bass player of the Untamed Youth, and we tried to keep the band going. We did sort of for about another year and a half. But what I found when I moved out there was this huge roots music scene that was going on there. And there was just all these bands playing and everybody playing every single night of the week and a big audience for it and people dancing. I mean, it was like, wow, look at all this. And so I started thinking, I love that type of music. I had a rockabilly band when I was 13 in Columbia. So this was not a new thing for me. And I just thought, well, there's all this audience for it. We should put a band together for it. And so this guy who I still know very well, Dave Stuckey, he had sort of been playing drums for the Untamed Youth. And we talked about putting together a rockabilly band. And so that was sort of the genesis of the Dave and Deke combo, which became the next chapter in the book.
Nice. What type of guitar did you prefer back then? Or had you already started collecting different models of guitars? Or
Well, I moved out to California with two guitars. I had a Fender Jaguar and I had a Gibson ES335. And those were guitars that I had played with the Untamed Youth. And when we started the Dave and Deke combo, I was using both of those guitars and they were fine. But then we played up in Bakersfield, and this is super early on. And there was a Mosrite double neck hanging in this pawn shop. And I remember I asked the guy, well, how much is that? He said, oh, that's $300. And I didn't have $300. So I had to borrow $300 from Dave Stuckey and pay it back, $50 at a time with our gigs. But then after that, I just started playing the Mosrite double neck, and I sort of became associated with that instrument. That led to backing up the Collins kids and getting to know all these other famous Mosrite players like Noki Edwards and Rosalie Mayfis and people like that.
Well, in recent years, the persona you've kind of cultivated, which, by the way, I think is just great, is different than back in those days. When I would see Untamed Youth, I remember you wore like a, what do you call it, like a tam or a driver cap? I don't know what the term for that cap is.
Well, I was never really blessed with good hair. Thanks, Dad. And so, you got to do something, man. And I kind of resisted wearing a cowboy hat for a very long time. But, every time I put on a cowboy hat, I'd have about 15 girls telling me, man, you look really good in a cowboy hat. And so, sometimes when I'm leaving a hotel wearing a cowboy hat, I kind of feel like an idiot. But then you get to the gig and all the girls are like, you look really good in a cowboy hat. It's like, okay, I guess I'll keep wearing the cowboy hat.
It is. It's a great look.
You have to, you have to be very confident of your cowboy hat wearing ability, or else people will see right through you. It's funny because I was just overseas in Spain, and this random woman came up to me and she said, guys who wear cowboy hats are either really cool or really, really weird. Well, okay, thank you. So I'm trying to stay on that cool side.
Yeah, you pull it off. I could never. I tried once or twice, and I don't know. Maybe I'm just too self-conscious to wear it. But it looks good on you.
You have to give up all self-consciousness.
Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
It's where we belong, right where we belong.
From his home studio on the outskirts of St. Louis, Andy Conrad has written, performed, and produced over 15 albums. A multi-instrumentalist, he not only sings lead vocals and harmony, but plays every instrument you hear on these albums.
Yeah, sometimes you get a melody in your head, but to be honest, a lot of it is just kind of messing around with a guitar or keyboard typically, and just seeing what I like. And so, but lately I've been just recording and writing just music, and then approaching the lyrics and the singing later, because I think the music is so fun and it's just a flow, and I don't judge the music like I do lyrics and the content of the lyrics, and because I think it's easier to judge lyrics, and I definitely do that. So yeah, I've been doing that separately, and I've kind of enjoyed it. It's helped me just kind of flow through the music part.
You can hear my talk with the prolific Andy Conrad in Season 1 of Frets.
Howdy, friends. This is Deke Dickerson, and you're listening to Frets with DJ Faye.
You have a regular column in Guitar Player. You did. Do you still do that?
Well, I did. It's funny because, when I was growing up, I read Guitar Player for, religiously. And there would always be some cool author come along writing about cool vintage guitars and weird guitars, and they would last about 5 years, and then they'd get fired. And that's basically what happened with me. They hired me, and I wrote columns for them for a number of years, and then just one day they decided to shift their focus to something else.
I gotcha.
I feel privileged that now I'm in the same category as all those guys that I grew up reading.
Yeah. I remember. I don't even remember if I had a subscription per se, but I'd just go to the magazine rack and I'd buy it when I was a kid and loved it. You also had some articles in Vintage Guitar, I think?
Yeah, I've written for all of them. I've written for Vintage Guitar and the Fretboard Journal and Guitar World. And it's funny because, when I was going to college in Columbia, I was studying journalism. And then I kind of abandoned that to go play music. And then all these years later, it's like, well, I guess I wound up writing for the magazines and doing the books that I would have done anyway. So there you go.
Yeah. Well, you also did the score for a movie by Johnny Knoxville.
I've done a bunch of stuff with Knoxville. That kind of started with a documentary called The Wild and Wonderful Whites of West Virginia. And I got hired to do the music for that by a friend of mine who was directing the film, a guy named Julian Nitzberg. And it was a really out there documentary. They followed the White family in West Virginia around for a year, and thousands of hours of video footage of basically, like, I don't know if you've seen the film, but it's the sort of thing where you can't believe this is actually going on in the United States of America. It's that crazy. Right. And the movie kind of bounced around from production company to production company, but eventually it wound up getting distributed by Johnny Knoxville's production company. And when I met him, I just said, "Hey, man, what do I have to do to get a song in a Jackass movie?" And it started from there. So
yeah,
I've had songs in 5 or 6 of his movies now. Yeah,
I love Johnny Knoxville. I just heard him recently on another podcast I love. He was on with the Smartless guys, and it was a really fun interview.
He's a really, really decent guy, and he has very, very good music taste.
Yeah, he talked about that. Yeah, very cool.
Well, I'm a gun-toting, mother-hunting, southern West Virginia white boy. And I'm a redneck, hillbilly, pill-snorting bundle of joy. Well, let's go hunting, 'cause I'm looking for a new decoy. Well, my mama was a pistol and my daddy was the son of a gun.
Looking to buy a guitar, an amp, pedals? Find great deals on all of these as well as audio and recording gear at reverb.com. You can also sell your gear through Reverb. They have great articles about music gear and bands. And Reverb believes music makes the world a better place. That's why they created Reverb Gives, that provides youth music education programs all over the world with the instruments they need to make music. Link to Reverb through Frets with DJ Faye in the show notes for this episode. I follow you on social media, and I love the photos you post from your travels. And I saw recently that you had visited the grave sites of a few well-known guitar greats.
Yeah, I always try to do that when I'm out traveling around.
Yeah, early last year, I was in Indianapolis and realized I was like 10 minutes away from the cemetery where Wes Montgomery's laid to rest. I made my way over there. I really am glad I did that. It was, a very modest little grave, but it had an engraving of like a guitar, and I like doing the same thing, and it was a very humbling experience.
Well, it's funny because I like graveyards a lot. I find them very peaceful, and I just kind of enjoy walking around in them, getting away from society for a little bit.
Yeah.
But then, the other thing I really like about it is it makes you realize we're surrounded by history, and
right.
Like you said, it's all this great sort of regional history that we have. It's just right at your fingertips if you care to find it,
Right.
Cemeteries and historic buildings and places where stuff happened. I just love that kind of stuff.
Yeah. I've been a handful of times in Savannah to Bonaventure, and I'm kind of drawn to it too. And there's like Johnny Mercer's grave is there, and one that I keep meaning to because it's not terribly far from here. I'm pretty sure Grant Green is maybe like 45 minutes away from here. I'm trying to remember now the cemetery, but yeah, someone was saying that Grant Green, who is from St. Louis, is buried.
I have not been to his grave, but I did go to Chuck Berry's grave last time I was in St. Louis.
Yeah.
I had to see that,
That's a must.
Yep.
I was talking earlier about some of your guitars. You have your own signature guitar.
I do. A friend of mine has a company called Hallmark Guitars based out of Maryland, and he does a good business sort of reissuing weird guitars from the 1960s. And I just approached him. I said, let's do a Deke signature model guitar, and he was up for the idea. So far, we've done 2 different ones, and people seem to like them. It's a fun thing to do.
Very cool. Well, several guests I've talked to in the first season of the show talked about what they did and how they dealt with the pandemic days, especially in 2020 when it was just really took us all like off guard and what do we do? But some of them had, put out songs or videos during that period. I think you did like over 50 videos while you were in quarantine.
Yeah, well, the whole world shut down in March of 2020, and it just so happened that I really needed to finish writing this book about Merle Travis. So
yeah.
When all my gigs got canceled, I just said, okay, I got to sit down and finish this thing. And I spent about 2 months just, fleshing that out and getting it done. And by the time that I realized, oh crap, I got to do something to get some money coming in, everybody had these live stream shows,
Mm-hmm.
Tuesday at noon, Thursday at 4 p.m. And
right.
I just thought, it's going to be difficult for me to come in now that these people have their established days and their established audiences and try to do something like that. So I started making these a cappella videos where you play all the instruments. And I took it as kind of I don't know what you'd call it, but like an excuse to try a bunch of stuff I had never done before. So did all kinds of stuff, soul music and garage band music, and it's just all over the map, doo-wop and gospel and things I'd never tried before. And it was pretty fun. And luckily everybody, at least in that first year and a half, were very supportive of us out of work musicians. So I have a lot of people to thank for sending in tips.
Well, you mentioned the Merle Travis book, and I know I'm just kind of in awe of how busy you stay, but you still managed to do all this. But you also at some point wrote a book, or I guess like parts 1 and 2, a couple books, The Strat in the Attic. Yeah, that was close to 10 years ago now. I wrote the 2 guitar books, and that was fun. People still seem to like those books. And then a friend of mine who worked for the BMG Corporation for their record label division, a guy named Scott Bomar, he started a BMG book imprint, and I knew he was a country music fan, and I just approached him. I said, man, there's got to be a Merle Travis book. And he agreed with me, and so that sort of started the ball rolling. And I worked on it for 3 years, and then it sort of got delayed due to COVID publishing delays for about another year and a half, 2 years, but it's going to come out in May. Yeah, I still am catching up on books, but I'm anxious and excited to read that.
My favorite comment was I went to Kentucky and went around to a lot of the places that Merle had grown up and saw a lot of the thumb pickers that still live out there. And it's funny because the guy that was hosting me, he said, "Now, I don't want to insult you, but I'm not going to read your book." I said, "Well, I appreciate. Thanks for the honesty." But he just said he doesn't have time to read books.
I don't have time to read all the ones I want to read, but I try to catch up a lot, and I do want to read that.
Well, you know what? I don't care if you read it. I just want everybody out there to buy it.
Yeah.
Just put it on your shelf. It'll make you look more intellectual. It'll impress the ladies.
Yeah.
Just buy a copy and don't read it.
Yeah, and for the most part, I love having physical books. I do get a handful on my iPad or iBooks, but I like them on the bookshelf. I like to display them. I like to hold them. I like the look and the feel of them. But
you've got a bunch of pictures in there, too.
Yeah.
Picture section.
Baby, I like your style and I don't mean maybe. But you're pouting and you're looking away, 'cause you're the best thing
Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Sun hangs low in the western sky. About my head that remember now. Someone's lips press close to mine. Her cool hand upon my brow. Elbert's heart for a killer's heart. Shallow grave.
Murray Attaway and high school friend Jeff Walls formed a band in the early 1980s. Initially calling themselves Emergency Broadcast System, they would become Guadalcanal Diary, a band who became a fixture in the Athens, Georgia music scene. Their live shows were incredibly popular, and before long they signed with independent label DB Records. After a tour of the States and a lot of airplay on college radio, they were signed by Elektra. They recorded and released albums throughout the 80s, playing their final show in 1989. Murray continues to write and record as a solo artist. He's composed music for several independent films, and several of his songs have appeared in movies and television.
And so I was able to score this film and then actually record it and then actually go, a violinist I knew took it and said, oh, just let me write charts out for it because I can't really do that. And he wrote all these charts out for it. But anyway, I put it together, this little ensemble, went in the studio and actually conducted them. So it was like the only time I've ever gotten to do that. And it was really, I'd love to do it again. But yeah, it's great because you're writing abstract music. All you're trying to do is serve the film, serve the scene, and serve the film as a whole. That's your job.
My talk with Murray Attaway coming up on Frets. Stay tuned.
Gone. No one passes on the road. Two girls wait by the railroad track for their soldiers to come back, knowing this will be their last. One wore blue and one wore black.
I like coffee, and I admit I've become a bit of a coffee snob. I drink coffee black because, hey, if you want to load up a cup with cream and sugar and syrups and all that, well, whatever. I want my coffee to be delicious without adding anything to it. I take the time to do pour-overs at home. I grind the beans and use my Chemex. The process is worth the wait, and when I buy beans, I buy coffee from my buddy String Bean Pete, coffee roaster and owner of String Bean Coffee. Pete's goal is to offer the finest beans from around the world. He roasts them passionately in small batches in non-computerized old-school ways to music under a disco ball. Yeah, you heard that right. He's a bit of a kook, but that's why I like him. And I really, really, really like String Bean Coffee. Find out more at stringbeancoffee.com. Well, Deke, you're someone I find myself cheering on, not only enjoying your music, but watching and following your journey of sorts. I live vicariously through all your great photos and videos from your travels. And you mentioned you just got back from Spain.
Yeah, the first time I'd been back to Europe since COVID shut down.
Yeah, I haven't been back either. Well, what's on the horizon for you, Deke?
Just trying to stay busy. We've sort of been going in waves out in California where we get really excited, like everything's coming back, and then a new variant will come and sort of spook everybody. So I'm hoping that things will be opening up this summer and there'll be more gigs. And in the meantime, I'm here in Georgia. We're going to North Carolina this weekend, and I'm going to Las Vegas and France in a month, and just trying to keep busy. So
yeah. Never a dull moment for Deke Dickerson.
Well, there is, but, it's not worth really talking about those.
You probably enjoy those sometimes, too.
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of weird during the 2-year COVID shutdown because I actually had to do a bunch of home projects I've been putting off for 15 years, Oh, man, I've literally done everything I can to put off redoing the attic insulation, but now I have to do it.
It's always something.
It's always something.
Well, Deke Dickerson, thank you so much for taking the time to talk today.
You got it, man. Thanks for having me. And hopefully I'll get back to St. Louis sometime this year. That would be great.
Yeah.
You got it. Good talking to you.
All right, you too.
I was born on the breeze, raised beneath the trees, and the night the courthouse burned, they lost my name. I've got hot blood inside this mountain of pride, and you're fooling with a wild, wild thing. Go tell your mom you're fooling with a wild, wild thing.
Deke Dickerson recently finished another book, 16 Tons, The Merle Travis Story, the official biography of the brilliant, multi-talented, world-class guitarist who dazzled audiences with his Kentucky thumb-picking style. A link to purchase Deke's new book is in today's show notes.
And you're fooling with a wild, wild thing. Go tell your mama you're fooling with a wild, wild thing. Well, I never knew my dad. Sister, she went bad. Started from good seed, but got swallowed by the weeds. Go tell your mom you're fooling with a wild, wild.
Thanks for listening to Frets with DJ Faye. If you like the show, you can follow or subscribe for free at most podcast platforms. Hope you'll join me again next time. Stay tuned.